This, I suppose, is Main Street.
Oh, no, ma'am. This is Elm Street.
Hello, Joe.
Oh, Mr. Peters.
Haven't seen you around the house lately. You been busy?
You bet.
Tell your ma I got some nice lean chops in.
I sure will. Mr. Peters is the butcher.
You don't say.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We're your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And this week we're really talking about some movies that people have really stopped talking about. We're talking about the two Joe Palooka movies from the 1940s and early 50s.
Yep.
Joe Palooka Champ and
Humphrey Takes a Chance.
Humphrey Takes a Chance. Now, Champ was the very first one, and it was from 1949? Did I get that right?
I think it might be 47.
46. Okay.
46 or
46.
Okay,
Yeah,
she's where we're both from.
So, this is, more than 10 years after the previous one.
Yeah, 12 years.
And the strip has changed quite a lot, too.
So it has.
So, we've had Leff has taken over on art duties as a ghost. He was poached from Al Cap.
Yes, that's right. We covered that last week, didn't we?
And is doing a much nicer, much more readable strip than Ham Fisher ever was.
Yes. And the tone of the comics has changed as well.
The tone has really changed. So Joe is still like a babe in the woods, but he's not a complete moron.
No.
Like he was. And Nobby is not the cheat. He's not constantly trying to rip off Joe or other people. He seems to be like a legit manager.
Yes.
He's like the noble one, and usually the villains are
the cheats.
Are the cheats, right.
Yes. Also, Joe spends quite a lot of time fighting Nazis.
Right. Yes. Yes. Yeah, he was in the army during the war years there, for sure. The character joined the army. Yep. They actually did a retcon of the origin a little bit. There's like a recap storyline in there during the army years where I think there's some storyline where he gets into the movies, he starts doing motion pictures, fight pictures, I guess, or it could be any kind of acting, I don't remember, but, and then like, there's a storyline where some of his fellow soldiers see a poster for one of his movies, and they say, tell us your story of how you started out, Joe, and we got really like redrawn by Leff, like the origin story, and it's...
And it's not him working in a haberdashery anymore.
No, it is. All that kind of stuff is there, but it's just like cleaned up, and it's like better presented. And now I've noticed there's also something I've noticed in the few issues we read this week, which are mostly about the introduction of the character of Humphrey. And from what I read online, like a lot of people don't know what's going on in Joe. Like most people haven't read it, but they were like, "Oh, I remember Humphrey like kind of took over the strip a little bit." He seems to be, in the beginning, only in the Sunday strips.
Okay.
He's not in the dailies, but I think it sounded like the way people are describing it, eventually he started taking over the dailies as well and became kind of was in almost more than Joe. And I think that kind of is true here as well. And even in the origin stories, it's like more... And it reminded me of... I remember when the first time I watched Rocky IV...
Okay.
And
boxing, it's relevant.
And my dad was like, who's he going to fight next, aliens? And it's kind of getting to that stage with Joe Palooka, especially with this Humphrey character.
Plus, Joe by this point has kind of cleaned up his act a lot from the early ones where he was a complete moron.
Yeah.
He's now, he's still, as you said, he's still a bit dumb.
Yep.
But his dumbness is... the kind of dumbness of a very virtuous person.
Yes.
So he's no longer thinks hand grenades are fruit.
Right.
Or he doesn't give away clothes out of shops anymore. It's more a kind of wholesome naivety.
Yes.
Expecting people to believe him when he says he lost a fight when he actually won it and things like that. It's like, no one will believe you, Joe. We all know what really happened. So Humphrey to me kind of feels like the original Joe's back, you know?
Yeah.
Like a comically stupid lummox
Yeah.
that hits really hard and otherwise doesn't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
Because by now Joe Palooka's become a very proficient boxer.
Yes.
The artist changed. Now he's a sculpted mesomorph. Although the face is still...
Yes, but he's gone full blonde at this stage.
Yes,
he's
that's
no
right,
longer
too.
got that early black hair.
Yes, he's blonde, because we read coloured strips. And but Ham Fisher still draws the faces, which is funny because Mo Leff will draw other characters and they'll look normal.
Yeah.
And then talking to them is Joe Palooka, who's got a face like two periods.
Like dots rise, yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, did you want to talk about the Nazi fighting strips a little
Sure.
bit? Yeah.
Sure. So one of the strips that I read for this week, Joe is in the middle of a fight and someone takes a shot at him from the audience and hits his competitor.
Okay.
And he's right after Joe punched him in the face, so it looks like Joe punched this guy to death. But they find the bullet pretty quickly. And because it started in medias res, Joe immediately knew who the person who tried to shoot him was. It is a top Nazi.
Okay.
Who's on American soil to steal the cosmic ray bomb plans.
Whoa. Wow.
Which he has done. He's wearing a false beard. He's got like a Lupe Velez kind of character with him. Just like a feisty senorita. And then everyone has to chase this Nazi. And when I say everyone, I mean Nobby, Joe, and assorted hangers-on.
Right. There are some plot elements that show up in these movies, oddly.
Isn't that... It was odd. Anyway, they eventually, he tries to get away in a boat.
Right.
Joe jumps out of a speeding kind of like speedboat and swims after him, corners him in a forest, and they have a fight to the death.
Fisticuffs in the forest.
Fisticuffs in the forest. The Nazis are screaming all this crazy stuff. About he's got a German accent and he's just screaming crazy stuff about how he's the new Führer. And then Joe kind of accidentally forces him to shoot himself in the face.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah, and then Joe then, as I said, because now his stupidity is less important than his gallantry, he's very concerned about the fighter who got shot.
Okay.
Because even though he knocked him out before he was shot, so he knocked him out and then he got shot and then he fell down, he thinks that isn't fair and they should, and there's some doubt and they should say it's a draw.
Okay.
So he calls together all the fight journalists and he tells them, he got shot before I punched him. And they just laugh at him and say, oh, Joe, your opponent already woke up and told us exactly what happened.
Right.
He was out first and was shot second.
Right.
And he's, oh, shucks. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so in 1946 we're introduced to Humphrey. Humphrey's a blacksmith with a big fat belly that lives in a tiny little village called West Walkington Falls.
Yes.
And has ridiculous strength like Joe had in the beginning. He can
like carrying a piano upstairs.
Yeah, he can lift. He lifts a safe. He lifts a car with one hand,
while holding an anvil with the other.
Yes, all that kind of stuff. He, not particularly in these strips, but later on he became famous for driving. He has this like tricycle with like a kind of outhouse built on the back that he pedals around in.
Shows up in the movie.
It does show up in the movie. It's in the strip all the time later on, and I saw someone online said that he was so strong that he actually at one stage attached wings to the outhouse and could pedal and like fly.
Yep.
So we've gone far off the boxing track at this stage, by the way. So he's like super dumb. He has a sister,
who he lives with.
Yes, who lives with. Their mom passed away the year before. Mom didn't want him to do any fighting or anything like that, or maybe in general. I'm not sure exactly.
It's all just like Joe was at the start.
Yes, very much so.
Except more ridiculous.
Yes. I think maybe Fisher started to realize that having Joe be totally dumb and Nobby be totally corrupt was not sustainable in the long term, and maybe after a few years he had to shift out of that.
Well, it's been a long time since these strips we read were like mid to late 40s. So it's almost more than 10 years after the last strips we read last week, and it's like a completely different comic.
Exactly, yeah. So, but Nobby manages to convince the sister to let
by courting her, basically. Sincerely.
Yeah, maybe sincerely.
It seems sincere. I was waiting for him to... Because the old Nobby, the one we read about last week, would have been absolutely, like, taking her for a ride. And have no interest in this prune-faced woman. Right. But Nobby seems genuinely into her. Mostly because she's a really great cook.
Yes, that's right. That's right. She does provide a feast the first time he shows up at the house. So he does manage to convince her to let Humphrey fight. He does have a few fights, but then he becomes kind of a background character. So he doesn't like fighting, much like Joe at the beginning was like, how can I fight somebody?
He has no problem with someone he's not angry at.
There is a funny thing where if anyone makes fun of mules, that makes him really angry, and then he'll beat them up. If anybody insults a mule,
because he loves his mule.
He loves mules. So that I actually laughed a couple of times when somebody would insult mules.
It's so ridiculous.
By the way, Batiste, the ex-RCMP lumberjack, shows up again.
Yes, he does. And with his ridiculous accent.
Yes, with his great ridiculous accent. And he says something about mules in the ring, and then Humphrey proceeds to completely destroy him.
Yep.
But the problem here is that Nobby has become so honorable that he has not signed a contract. He's got a handshake agreement with Humphrey, and some unscrupulous promoters figure this out, or managers, and they make him sign a legal contract.
They ask him for his autograph, and it's...
Yes, they lie, that's right. They say, can we have your autograph?
But they sign a contract, and it's a terrible contract that says he has to fight every single week.
Yeah, and they move into his house. They literally move in upstairs.
That's right. That's what it says in the contract, that they have to provide room and board to the managers, that he'll lose his blacksmithery if he doesn't fight.
Yeah, so he's forced, and meanwhile,
the whole town has pooled all their money.
They've mortgaged all their houses. Nobby wants to build a stadium, $1 million stadium in the town, and turn the town into this big deal, West Washington Falls. And he's like, let's build this, and then we'll have no problem. And his whole plan was to have managed two fighters,
and not
Humphrey sometimes, and Palooka. Whenever Palooka wasn't fighting, he would work on Humphrey, and they would never have to fight each other. But because these guys got this shady deal, and they made him sign a contract before Nobby did, Humphrey's beholden to these guys.
Yep.
So he has to fight.
Yes, because if he doesn't, he'll lose his house, and also the whole town will be completely ruined because they've sunk all their savings into building this stadium.
Yes.
And the stadium will only work if Humphrey fights in it, because he's the draw.
Yes.
For everybody to come.
Right.
So if he doesn't fight, the town goes...
Because he won't leave town. This is part of his character. He won't leave his little hometown. He loves it there.
So there needs an out.
Yeah.
How are we going to solve this? So Nobby and Joe come up with a plan.
Yes.
That we're not really privy to until the very end. But it involves a fight between Humphrey and Joe. Dun dun dun.
Yes.
The one thing that Nobby didn't want to happen. And this is like a big deal because, like Humphrey is like a troll.
Yeah.
He's like magic.
Yeah.
He can destroy things with his belly.
Oh yeah, and Batiste is really worried that Humphrey's going to destroy Joe in the ring.
He's going to kill him.
Because his manager had fought Joe Batonka, or whatever his name was. He had fought Humphrey, and Humphrey had destroyed this guy. So they're like, we can't let him fight Joe.
And so there's a sort of a B plot where they're trying to kidnap Humphrey or to stop him from fighting Joe. Because the lumberjack and Joe are friends now.
Right.
Anyway, they have this match, and Humphrey's just knocking the shit out of Joe.
Yes.
But then eventually I think Joe...
Finally what happens is Joe manages to knock him down, and his butt gets stuck in the ring.
That's right.
He's like so heavy that he like creates this hole that he's stuck in and can't get out of, and he gets counted out.
And then they count him out.
They count.
And then they reveal that it's okay that Humphrey doesn't fight because they're going to buy everyone's mortgages.
Yes, they're going to pay off the stadium with their previous winnings from the year, and they're not going to lose, and they're going to pay their tax, and they're going to break even.
Yeah.
So it will be like it doesn't matter. Yeah. That was their whole solution.
So they can break the contract with the unscrupulous managers. It's not a great solution.
No. Didn't strike me as...
And I don't know why they had to even have an exhibition match. Couldn't they have just bought out the debt without even having the match?
Yes. Maybe the contract commanded Humphrey to have this match with Palooka. I'm not sure because...
But he's breaking it anyway by not fighting anymore.
Yes.
They didn't even need to have the fight.
I was very confused about how all of this worked.
Yeah.
But that's fine because in the movie there's a lot of contract talk that I did not. And these movies are all about contracts.
Yeah.
These two we watched, number 1 and number 9.
It's all about contracts.
It's all about contracts. And
It's such a funny coincidence.
Really couldn't figure out what was going on with these
Do you
contracts.
think a lot of Ham Fisher stories are about contracts?
I don't know. Was it just coincidence? A lucky coincidence?
I think it was, but imagine if you open up your newspaper and say, shit, Joe Palooka's got another contract dilemma.
It really did seem to be about that all the time. Okay, so we get these 11 Joe Palooka movies starting in 1946. They're about an hour long each.
Yes, that's right.
These ones are leaning heavily into the comic. They say based on the comic strip by Ham Fisher, and there's always art from the comics at the beginning or end. In fact, the opening shot of the first movie has like Joe and Nobby looking in a mirror, but it's like the cartoon characters of the reflections.
That was cool.
That kind of stuff.
And at the end of the film, it's a fade out. Nobby looks directly into camera and then fades out, and it's him as the comic
as the drawing.
character.
Yeah.
So credits with art again. Comic panels in the opening credits.
Yes.
Always pleased to see that.
Yes. And okay, we got a guy named Leon Errol playing
Nobby.
Nobby. Yeah.
Yep.
And we got Joe Kirkwood Jr. playing Joe Palooka, who we mentioned last week.
They were both in, I think, Joe Kirkwood playing Joe. I think he was in all 11.
He is, and in not much else. He was in the TV series that followed, the 26-episode TV series.
And starred in it, yeah.
Yep. And not much else, because he was a golf pro.
Correct,
as we mentioned, from Melbourne.
Yes. That's right. He was born in Melbourne.
He does not have the physique of a golf pro. I will say, he's pretty tall.
Yeah.
Pretty fit. He's not like Joe from last week at all.
But then neither is the Joe in the comic.
That's true. That's true.
No, he's in shape.
Yeah.
He's in boxing shape.
Yes.
I just assumed that he took boxing lessons.
Yeah, maybe so. And his
boxing is
really
noticeably better.
Yeah. Oh, the boxing is actually, that's right. We actually get more boxing scenes in this version. We don't just see, we're not in the change room while the boxing match is happening off screen.
Yep. We get actual boxing, not just men hugging.
Yes, yes, and there's like 3 or 4 of them in an hour-long movie. And I will say, it's interesting. Both these movies have had like pretty like full stadiums, and I feel like in last week's the 1934 version, which I think was maybe a bigger budget movie. It felt like they somehow got all these extras in there for a couple of shots, or they did some filming before an actual match started. I don't know. This one felt a bit faker. It felt like they just, because you're really far away from the fighters, you can't see them, so it's just like they got some stock footage, and there's definitely stock footage of some moments in some of these movies.
Well, these ones are made much more cheaply.
Much more cheap. Everything's done on a sound stage or on the studio lot. When they're walking around in the street, that's a studio lot. It's so obviously just a
back lot. Yeah.
Unlike last week,
Supergirl. No.
Last week we had that like breakdown on the car broke down on the dirt road, and it's like you're out there on the dirt road.
Lots of different location shoots, lots of different places.
Yeah.
You know, the club setting, they had money. Like that was like a big picture. These are serials. They're just cranking out 10 and they've cranked out 11 over like 11 years.
More like 6-7 years, something like that. Yeah.
So they're doing, and the studio will just be Monochrome Pictures or whoever put this out. They're doing 50 of these a year.
Yeah.
This is like Harold Teen all over again. They're just banging them out, and Blondie.
Yes, and Blondie especially, and the Red Rider movies.
Yeah, it's just the equivalent of kind of like network television before network television existed.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
Just doing one of these a week.
Exactly. Without quite being a serial. Directed by somebody named Reginald Le Borg. I have no idea about him. And 3 writers this time instead of 5. But it's still 3 writers for a 1-hour movie.
Yeah, wild.
Seems
a lot happens in...
Yes.
Well, not the first one so much, but the second one, a lot happens.
Yes. Okay, so Anne Howe is in this. She's actually Anne Howe. She's not quite the flapper, but we'll be introduced to her. And Smokey is in it. He's got a lot more lines and more of an influence on events.
He's had it was a pretty good role.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
I felt alright watching this, whereas I did not feel alright reading about Smokey in those early comics. That was very, very racist.
Yeah.
But here, he's like the co-manager, essentially.
Yeah.
And he's giving Joe advice.
Yep.
Yeah, so much better.
Yeah. Yes, much better in that regard. So it starts with a flashback because Joe is already world champ, and a bunch of people come in to interview Nobby, and he says, I'll tell you the story of how I recruited Joe.
Yep.
And now we get a flashback, which has changed the origin from the comics.
Yep.
Again, somehow they don't like the origin. We've done this twice, and they're like...
Terrible origin.
I guess so, yeah.
Well, now we get a really long scene of Nobby wandering around a gym. Well, first of all, Nobby's coached a champ, Costa, to the championship. He's the world heavyweight champion. Then there's a...
He had a handshake deal with Costa. He did not have a contract.
He's betrayed.
And some gangsters came in and made him sign a contract, so he lost Costa.
Well,
Costa
it seems
won
like Costa
championship.
betrayed Nobby, actually.
Yeah.
Because Costa's laughing at Nobby as well in this scene. He tries to go into the change room, and they don't keep him in. He's like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah.
Let me in. Let me see my champ. He says, he's not your champ, he's our champ. We got a contract. Do you have a contract? He says, no, I had a handshake deal. It's like, well, you try that in court. And they're all just laughing at him. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So him and Smokey dejectedly leave.
Yeah. So now he's got to find a new fighter.
And here, even before he's even met Joe, he's like everyone knows him.
That's right.
He's a respectable boxing manager.
Yes.
And coach.
Yes.
Completely unlike the comics where he owned a menswear shop.
Yeah. Yeah. I do wonder if it's maybe more... Would it be more interesting to see two guys work their way up to the top? The manager and the fighter?
Yeah.
Rather than have the manager already be there?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, so he comes to this gym... very long scene of him looking at boxers, trying to choose one. He wants a heavyweight. He doesn't want a lightweight or a welterweight or whatever.
Or a bantamweight.
There's some real fighters in this scene.
Including Joe Louis.
Joe Louis is in this.
The Brown Bomber.
Yep.
Probably the greatest boxer of all time.
Yeah.
He's just there in the film.
I think this is like...
He's just got a cameo.
I have a feeling this movie's trying to appeal to boxing fans, like to have real boxers in there and get butts and seats for people who are hoping to go see a fight movie. And they're also trying to...
I don't know.
Legitimate themselves by saying, look, we're based on this comic strip that 50 million people read every day. Look, here's some panels. This is what we're making. And they're kind of front-loading all this stuff.
Obviously, Strip for Murder was fiction.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of tongue-in-cheek references to the real careers of the cartoonists.
Okay.
And in Strip for Murder, the Ham Fisher XP, Sam Fitzer, he was very pally with boxers.
Okay.
So, he would draw them in the strip a lot, and as a result, and he would go to boxing matches, and he kind of like was celebrated. He wasn't celebrated, but he took a lot of pleasure in the fact that he knew like these boxers and was able to rub shoulders with them. He was the boxers cartoonist.
Right. It also occurs to me that...
But again, I read this in a fiction book. I want that caveat there.
Yeah. But you just pointed out that, the real boxers would appear in the strip.
Yes.
So this is kind of in keeping with that as well, to have actual boxers just have walk-on parts. Okay, so he decides he's gonna go from town to town holding exhibition matches in like barns and stuff.
Because not only is he an established boxing manager, but now he's being frozen out by organised crime.
Yeah.
Because whenever he tries... all these boxers are desperate to work with him, including Joe Louis. They really want to be managed by Nobby Walsh, the Nobby Walsh. Yeah. And yet, whenever he approaches one, someone shifty-looking will sidle up afterwards and say...
Sign this contract, kid.
You don't want to be with Nobby Walsh, kid.
Yeah.
You want to live to see your next birthday, you're going to sign with, Al Capone.
Right.
Or whoever.
Right.
So now he's desperate straits. His crew, he's got these mates, these guys show up in the other movies as well. They say, we'll just tour the hick towns and we'll put on fake boxing exhibition matches. Days before television.
Yeah.
People in towns went and saw the traveling shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he pulls up at this gas station run by this man named Herman Palooka, which makes me think that Joe's father never had a name in the strip, because we've had two different names for this guy.
Right. Yeah, good point.
He's no whatever Bruce Wayne's dad's name, Jonathan Wayne. Can't remember, but anyway, we don't have an established name for Joe's
Wayne.
dad.
Or what about Pa Kent? What was his name?
That was John. No, couldn't be. It was definitely Martha Wayne.
Martha. Save Martha.
Famously Martha Wayne. Can't remember the name of his father. Anyway, so the 10 minutes into the movie, so they stop in town. There's no inns. There's no inn they can stay at in town for the night. There's the campsite up the road is full.
Yep.
So they're gonna have to stay at the Palooka house. So 10 minutes into the movie, we finally meet, in this hour-long movie, we finally meet Joe Palooka.
Yeah, after a very long sequence in a gym where the sole purpose of which was for boxers to do cameos.
That's right, boxer cameos. So now, Anne Howe pulls up at the gas station.
Yes.
Joe fills up her tank, but she has a breakdown on the spot. Can't get a new part until Monday. I don't think we know what day it is. I don't think they've said if it's Friday or Thursday or Sunday or what. They say we can't get a part till Monday. So she's got to stay at the Palooka house as well, which is now full of dudes, but she's going to be sleeping with
Joe's little sister,
Rosie.
Yep.
He has a brother, Stevie, as well, but Rosie's this cute little girl. She's got a couple of cute scenes in here.
Yep.
Very precocious little actress.
Yeah. Yes.
So the men are all of Nobby's men are... I couldn't really understand this scene. They seem excited that this beautiful young woman had shown up at the house. And then as they're going upstairs, they say bread and butter to each other. And I don't understand what that meant. Is some phrase from the 40s that meant something?
Yeah.
It was almost like if it had been said somewhere else, it might say, it's caught me writing slang for something. Mutter? I don't know. Yeah. Anyway.
It was weird.
Okay.
We get a really long sequence where they wander around this
very long sequence. So Joe and Anne go for a walk down the street. This is like a romantic date. He's just showing around town.
Down the monochrome pictures backlot.
Like everybody in town comes up to Joe. Like this guy walks up and says, Joe, I'll have those cuts of prime beef you wanted for you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, Bob. And then he walks away. And Joe's like, that's the town butcher.
And
these songs are...
And does it 3 or 4 times.
This happens 3 or 4 times. Everybody comes up, I'll have your clothes ready for you tomorrow, Joe. And he's like, that's the town tailor. And she's giving lines that are like, oh, really? Like sarcastic, like, I can tell, Joe.
It's meant to be funny, I suppose.
It's meant to be a little bit... It's supposed to be meet cute kind of thing, funny. It is... boring and weird.
Yes, really weird.
Weird and slow, and he takes her to a movie. They go to see a Western.
There's a scene where they're sitting in a movie theater. It's like, what is this doing in this movie about boxing? We don't have
time to be watching another movie while we're in the boxing movie.
That's right. This movie's only an hour long.
And we get like a whole scene out of this Western, and she's kind of acting like shocked by the violence in it. I thought she was supposed to be like this sophisticated big city girl.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
You really don't know what's going on with this.
Joe's eating popcorn. He's enthralled.
Yes. So the whole town shows up at the exhibition match, which is very small. It's not many people in town. Nobby was surprised by this, but I think they knew this was what they were in for anyway. So the whole town is like 50 people maybe. But the way this fight works is they put 4 dudes in the ring with blindfolds on, and they just pummel each other with blindfolds on until last man standing.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a real thing that happened or something they made up for this movie. It just seemed crazy to me.
Yeah, it was crazy. But I mean, it's all rehearsed.
Actually, I think it's, like wrestling, but I think it's just for the movie because the blindfolds are key to the plot development, which is that Joe... he's like the cigarette girl. He's like selling concessions.
This enormous man.
To people
selling candy.
In the crowd. Yeah, he's selling candy and cigarettes, popcorn, whatever. And somebody throws him a coin which ends up going past him into the ring. So he climbs into the ring and the guys start beating him up.
Yeah.
But then they, like, what's going on? And they pull off their blindfolds and they see it's a guy that's not supposed to be in there. It's Joe Palooka.
Yeah. And they decide to have some fun.
They decide to beat him up anyway.
Yeah.
But
have some fun with the local hick.
Right. So they start, but Joe just cleans her
Joe
clothes.
lays him out, yeah.
And this is this is the origin of Joe Palooka in this version.
Yeah, Nobby comes back in
Yeah.
from where he was outside. We're settling up with the barn owner. And Smokey comes out and says, you better come in because it's all going wrong. They run back in, and Nobby arrives just in time to see Joe absolutely knocking the shit out of these guys.
Yeah.
And he's like, whoa!
Yeah.
Dollar signs. He's found his fighter. He's found his heavyweight fighter. The one that's going to win the championship and get his revenge against Costa.
Yes.
Because Nobby really, really wants to beat Costa.
Yes, that seems to be the through line, the plot of the movie, really,
Yeah.
or
Which is
his central...
A weird kind of motivation
Yes.
for a film.
It's not Joe's motivation, it's his motivation.
Yeah.
Strange.
It is.
Odd choice. So, for this fight, to become a fighter, Joe wants $1,200 to buy the gas station. Yeah. I didn't quite understand this. I thought they already owned it. I don't, like, a lot of these little details were...
Yeah. No, I don't think his dad did own the gas station. It belonged to that old man.
Okay.
But he wants to buy it.
Okay.
The old man's retiring.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And he wants to buy it for the $1,200.
Okay. But the thing is, Herman will not sign a contract because he believes that the Palooka's word is bond.
Yeah.
You should do this on a handshake.
Yeah. And Joe agrees because he says, you talk to my dad, see what he says. You'd think this would be important. It's not, because...
Later on, he signs a contract.
He just signs a fucking contract later on.
Yeah. It's completely forgotten.
So this means nothing, this scene.
No, absolutely means nothing. But Anne Howe has had her car fixed, and she gives Joe a blank check for the amount. And Nobby's like, whoa, you're giving him a blank check? She says, yeah, I trust him. And that's what changes Nobby's mind. And he's like, okay.
Well, presumably because there's a hard cut there, and in the next scene...
Right.
Joe's with Nobby and they're embarking on their career.
Yes, now we have a training montage.
But, I mean, it is pretty clear that that's what changes his mind.
Yes.
But, yeah. So, because Nobby's been burned, you see, because he got so wounded by those mobsters and Costa now, because he was ready to back away.
Yeah.
Because, if I don't get a contract, well, I'm just going to give up on this whole thing.
Yeah.
My whole chance for redemption or whatever this represents for him.
Yeah.
But then Anne says, yeah, I just wrote him a blank check because I trust him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we get a fight against this guy who has a cyclone punch, we're told, and we actually see this in the ring, and it's a very cartoonish looking thing where he's like swinging his arms around each other in a very weird comic strippy way.
Yeah.
I didn't know if I really have trouble, it's more in the next movie, but in this movie, some stuff didn't seem to fit, like it seems to be trying to be grounded in some scenes. As soon as you got Joe Louis in that opening scene, you're like, okay, this is all real world kind of stuff. But then we've got weird stuff like that blindfold match and this weird cyclone punch that this guy has.
Well, the blindfold match was just something, that was your carnival tricks for the crowd. Yeah. Like, it was like a rehearsed bit.
Yeah.
But this fight is silly because he's sort of jumping around and acting silly, but getting right up in Joe's face and waving his arms around and spinning his wrists around one another, and then Joe just lays him out.
Yeah.
And I don't understand what, like you say, because no one would really fight like that.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, strange little bits where sometimes somebody can't decide what it wants to be.
It was a bit like in Bloodsport where there's that one guy that fights like a monkey.
Yes. Yes. Well, I would say everything in Bloodsport is really... How does this fit into the real world?
Yep. That's fair.
Okay, so Anne is at this fight. She has come, because she lives in New York, she's shown up at the fight. She's there with her boyfriend, Ronnie Brewster.
Yep.
Now, she goes backstage to the dressing room to congratulate Joe after he wins. Ronnie shows up, he says, hey, I can see you've got eyes for this guy, I'm out.
Yeah. He just sort of, and he's really polite about it too.
He's very polite. He's like, well, I can, that he's chiseled, very handsome. I can see the way you look at him.
He says, I'll just step back now.
Yeah.
You got my number. If you want to get in touch with me in the future, I'll see you later. And she's like, what are you doing? What is this?
Yeah.
He goes, bye.
It is very immature behavior, I would say. Well, immature and mature, I guess it was like realistic, but it seems like a strange, childish...
Why put this in your movie?
Exactly, especially since it contradicts a later scene.
Because in a later scene, he's jealous.
Yeah.
Why did you step back if you're jealous?
Yeah, exactly.
And he goads Joe into attacking him.
Yeah.
By calling him a hayseed and saying he's in the wrong part of town and all this sort of stuff. It's like, but
yeah, you said goodbye to this girl and accepted that she was into this guy.
Yeah. So we have at least 4 scenes that can contradict one another.
Yeah.
We've got the contract where Palooka's never signed contracts, and then Joe just signs a contract.
Yeah.
And it's not even... There's no lampshade hung on
No.
it. You know, Nobby doesn't say, well, you're signing one now.
It's like they forgot. It's like they forgot the earlier scene.
And now we have this one with the guy who's not jealous and then is jealous.
Yeah. Yeah. So they have a celebratory dinner after this match. Joe orders milk, so Anne orders milk too. I was a little bit cute. I liked that she ordered milk.
He's very wholesome.
But meanwhile, we have to deal with Nobby and his dudes who are super dumb. They're holding the menu upside down.
Yeah.
There is a whole stupid bit about asparagus and...
Asparagus tips. Like, they want the whole asparagus.
And the prices, and it was just... It really went on and on. It was not funny, but it told me that they thought this was a funny movie. They thought it was a kind of comedy. And there's some moments in here where they're trying to write jokes that are just dead.
Yeah.
They're so lame. But she tells him success changes people at this dinner.
Yep.
And I thought, oh, we're going to have this storyline again.
No.
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 Yeah.
Well, he does want to go on dates with Anne.
Yes.
So Nobby wants him to go train on a farm.
He's worried about dames. Nobby's very worried about dames.
He's always worried about dames. He was worried about dames in the last movie too, wasn't he?
Dames are going to ruin this fighter. Is his concern. But he's got a 6-fight contract. As we mentioned, he signed it.
Signed a contract.
No questions asked. Now we had another montage. This one is with like newspaper headlines and marquees showing who's fighting who and Joe's winning, etc., etc. Joe goes on a date with Anne on Broadway, which is, it's all rear projection and it's so bad.
Yep.
These people are sitting in a room that's maybe, 3 meters by 3 meters in this car that's just jumping around as this rear projection of Broadway is in the background. And we're supposed to be like, he's so impressed by the city lights, and I'm looking at this going, this is not impressive. Like, you're undercutting your movie here with this bizarre montage of this date on Broadway. So now we have the society party, Anne's party, where Ronnie is there, and we get the whole jealousy scene. Joe, when he's insulted by Ronnie, runs out of the party. He's like, he thinks...
I guess I don't belong here.
I don't belong here. He runs out. The music is really... super dramatic, like overly dramatic throughout these movies.
You're right. Yes, they are.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Like he's running out. It's all supposed to be really heartbreaking. Anne calls to try to get him to patch things up with Joe.
Yeah.
But Nobby answers the phone and lies and says that Joe isn't here because he doesn't want this dame hanging around.
Yeah, that's a Nobby kind of thing to do.
Yep.
And then Joe decides he's going to go back home, I think, to wherever he's from.
Yes.
One filling station town or wherever it is. But I think Smokey talks him out of it.
Right.
By just showing him the contract.
Yes, that's right.
Says, look, what's this? He goes, that's the contract I signed. And he goes, I heard Palooka's word was his bond.
That's right.
And then Joe just immediately comes around and starts putting his clothes back in the dresser.
Right.
Fine, except it's a contract. It's not his word.
Yes.
I thought you didn't sign contracts.
Yeah. These movies are very confused about contracts. So Joe has to fight this guy, Dynamite O'Toole, before he can get to Costa. Costa will be the match after if he beats O'Toole. By the way, this is the second of these movies that had a fighter named Dynamite, because we had Dynamite Wilson or whatever in the last one. Costa's... We get a scene of him. He's a very arrogant kind of fighter. He's not worried about Joe Palooka. But his manager, who's a strange kind of foreignish accent. I think he's supposed to be coded as foreign. Maybe even coded as homosexual, the way he puts that flower in his lapel.
Maybe. I thought, the actor is Italian, or of Italian extraction.
Okay.
And I figured it was a mafiosa.
Right. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah.
And he won't bet on anything unless it's a sure thing.
Yeah.
So it's not good enough that Costa will probably beat Joe.
Yeah.
He wants it to be a sure thing, so they want to fix it somehow. And how they decide to fix it is by murdering Joe.
Well, I think they try to bribe him first.
They do, actually. You're right, they do. They come and visit him and they...
But they keep saying it's just going to be a push job, boss.
What was push job?
I don't know. They kept saying, we're going to do a push job. He's like, no, we don't need a push job.
We never figured out what push job was.
I think it's supposed to be like...
Is that murder?
I would guess.
Because murder was the last resort.
Yeah.
So first, you're right. First they try to buy him off. And it's like you said, oh my god, are we going to have another thing? Is Joe going to sign a contract?
Yeah.
And be signed to these guys instead of... No, that's not what happens.
He just turns down the bribes.
Yeah, he does. They say... First they ask him, do you have a contract with Nobby? And he says, no, just a handshake agreement. And they're like, that's perfect!
Yeah.
And then he just punches them. Joe punches them when he figures out that he wants them to take a dive. Or get wet, or jump, or go in the drink. They have all these euphemisms for taking a dive. Taking a dive, it's funny. Then Joe goes back and he tells Nobby that he punched these guys, and Nobby's basically says, oh, well, that's it. We got to go home.
Yeah.
Because those guys are hard men, and when they don't take beatings, they dish them out, he says. So, we just got to go home. And Joe says, no, I'm not going home. No, I'm going to fight. He goes, Joe, I want you to fight more than anything, but, I don't want you to get hurt, which is this odd thing to say when you manage a boxer.
Yeah.
I don't want you to get extrajudicially killed.
Right.
I don't care if you get your face punched in, but I don't want you to get shot by mobsters.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
But he's persuaded because Joe's so good-hearted he can't back out of it.
Right. So we do have the big match with Costa. Now, there's a whole training camp sequence. All this stuff doesn't really matter. He does patch things up with Anne.
Yes.
Through an apology letter. And actually, Nobby is very noble about it. He's like, actually, I shouldn't have done that. And he's the one that patches things up between them.
The goons stake out the stage entry.
Yeah, so there's this guy... Oh yeah, they thought they had gotten rid of him, but he actually shows up at the match late, right?
He comes in with the crowd. This is never... We're just left to figure that out. They as I said, they stake out the stage entrance with the gun, and they're just going to shoot.
Yeah.
Shoot him on the street.
Yeah.
If he tries to enter the thing.
Yeah.
And we're left to wonder what happens. Then we cut to the inside the boxing arena, and it's just Costa on the stage with the ref and the announcer who says, Joe Palooka hasn't showed up. Looks like we're going to have to do a forfeit. Crowd's not very happy. And then Joe stands up from the crowd. I'm here. He was wearing a trench coat and hat, reveals himself. So presumably he went in with the general crowd.
Oh, I see.
But that's not explained.
Got it. Okay, I totally missed that. I thought I just beat those guys up or something and made his way through. So, the fight starts happening. Fight staged pretty well.
Yeah.
The gangster's name is Florini. He's talking to his guy, and it seems like his fighter Costa's going to lose. Mm-hmm. So he turns to one of his sub gangster and sends him off. But meanwhile, the boxing commissioner has noticed that who they refer to as Florini's finger man has gone off somewhere. They're like, well, you got to go find out where he's gone.
Yeah, they get the cops involved.
Yes. So that guy actually goes up to the booth where there's a guy filming.
Yes.
He knocks that guy out and actually gets a gun out. He's going to shoot Joe Palooka in the ring. I don't understand how this works. What is your plan here?
I'm pretty sure you don't win if the other guy gets shot.
Yeah, if Joe Palooka dies from a bullet wound in the ring, does that mean the other guy retains the world championship?
I'm pretty sure no.
No.
Not unless he knocks him out first, like in that comic with the Nazis.
It's crazy, but he can't really get a clear shot.
It's so dumb. Like, I'm like, what are the stakes? There's no stakes. Obviously, Joe Palooka's not going to get shot, but also, this is no way going to resolve the situation.
No, absolutely not. Joe is a bit distracted by Anne, who's shown up in the audience because she's been invited by Nobby. So he manages to KO Costa. The gunman is shot by the cops that are behind him.
Yep. Cops find him.
Yes.
And yeah, that's pretty much where the film ends.
Yeah, and then somebody says, I'll see you in the funny pages. Who gave that line?
Oh, right, yeah.
I wrote that down.
Well, what happens is, our framing device is, this is Nobby talking about how he hired
that's right.
Joe for the first time.
Right.
And then Nobby winds up the story, and they goes, gee, thanks Nobby, that was a brilliant story. And Nobby says, you're welcome, when will this appear in print? Later this week? And the guy says, no, the paper I write for is like a...
Quarterly.
Yeah. And Nobby's like blinks. He goes, who did you say you work for again? And they work for some...
It's like farm equipment.
Podunk Regional...
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, actually.
Yeah.
And then the journalist, the one that's put one over on him by getting a great story for the farm equipment magazine that's published 4 times a year, It says, see you in the funny pages.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, where you find Joe Palooka.
That's right.
normally.
That's right. They really kind of leaned into it in this one. Okay, let's talk about Humphrey Takes a Chance.
Okay,
So this is now the 9th of 11 movies.
Yep. And not the first movie with Humphrey either.
No, second one, but this is the only one that was on YouTube
Yes.
currently. These movies were not available until 2 weeks ago,
I know.
magically.
Such a...
Bizarrely. Yeah, so Humphrey was in 3 of them. This is number 9 of the 11 movies. So it's the second of the 3 ones that he's in. It's also an hour long. Director is Jean Yarbrough. I don't know who that is. There's only one writer. We have a new Anne.
Yes.
We have Humphrey.
She's, Lois Collier as the Anne.
Okay.
I've written her down because she was in a Blondie movie.
Was she?
Blondie Goes to College.
Okay, what about Robert Coogan?
You spotted that? Well done.
Well, I don't know. I was looking him up. So this is the guy that plays our Humphrey. He's pretty well cast because he's this kind of big guy with a fat gut.
Yep.
In this, he looks the part. He really looks the part.
Yep.
Robert Coogan was Suki in the Skippy movie
Yeah, that's right.
from 1931. That was
That's
20
right.
years before this when he was about 7 years old, 6 or 7. So now
Yep.
he's like 25, 26 in this.
Yes, I couldn't believe it when I saw that.
I could believe it. By the way, I have a line on the Suki movie from 1931, so we might
Then he'll be coming up. Well,
might be able to cover it.
That would be something.
Yeah.
I don't want to read any more Skippy comics,
No.
but I did really enjoy Skippy,
yes.
the movie.
Yes, so we might get back around to that one.
Oh, that'd be cool. Then he'll become an all-star.
Yeah. There's a first-person voiceover from Joe in this. Starts with a first-person voiceover. Doesn't come back later in the movie.
No.
It's just he just introduces who he is as if you don't know anything about Joe Palooka. My name is Joe Palooka. Became the world championship. It's very straightforward, very boring. Actually, none of Joe's original personality is in this.
No. No, he doesn't do anything dumb, because it's just Humphrey doing everything dumb now,
Yes.
isn't it? It's the gallant Joe.
Yes.
And he doesn't even get to do many gallant things either. He's just,
No,
he's very
really
he's kind of a background character.
yeah.
It's Nobby and Humphrey are the main characters in this
I
one.
think so, yeah. Okay, so it starts with this scene, which I did not understand, where this guy named Rogers, who is a fight promoter, maybe? I don't know, wants 30% of all of Joe's takes.
It's contract shenanigans.
And Joe
mentions that people are always trying to fix boxing matches. There are people that don't want to win it fair and square. They're always trying to break the law and break the rules and make a dishonest buck.
Yeah.
And then we go straight to a scene where this guy, Rogers, is talking to Nobby. He's done something.
Yes.
Something that should be impossible. He's signed every fighter in America and every boxing arena in America, so that Joe Palooka can literally not fight anyone or fight anywhere in all of America.
Okay.
And which is obviously ridiculous.
This is why I couldn't understand.
It's obviously ridiculous.
Because it's impossible.
But these are the stakes.
Right.
Joe won't be able to fight. They tell him you better take up shadow boxing because there's no one in the country that'll fight him, and we've got a line on every boxing arena in every town in America.
Right.
So you got to give us 30% of what Joe makes each year, or he's just going to have to go back to the filling station. And Nobby won't be pushed around. He tells him to get out and gives him an exploding cigar.
Yes, which...
Atomic exploding cigar.
Yeah, this cigar gets passed around again and again through the movie. It's a running quote-unquote gag.
Yeah, not very funny
Who's
gag.
going to light the cigar because it keeps getting passed to another person. Okay, so Nobby decides he's going to set up his own fights. Or his own fight, at least. And he's going to do it in the town of...
No.
Oh, okay.
No, well, he says he'll do that.
Yeah.
But then they just decide to go see Humphrey for unrelated reasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's silly. And it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay.
Because then what happens is they overhear... No, Roger and his goons say... Oh, Nobby's he's leaving the city, he's going somewhere. And they say, he must be going somewhere to set up a new fight.
Right.
What town did he say? And he said West Wokingham. He said, I could stage a fight in West Wokingham Falls if I wanted to.
Yeah.
But when Joe says, are we really going to fight in West Wokingham? Nobby says, no, I just threw that name out there as...
Right.
Like Backer Burke or Small Town USA. It just popped into my head because Humphrey lives there.
Our pal Humphrey is there.
So why don't we go see Humphrey and talk about what we're going to do?
Right, okay.
But then the schemers Rogers, he has like a million schemes and they all blow up in his face. He says, he mentioned West Wokingham. The fact that he mentioned that means something. That's where that super strong guy Humphrey lives.
Yeah.
He must be going there to...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we got to get there first.
Right.
And they give Rogers all this money and they say, go there in Grease Palms and make sure that this fight doesn't happen.
Right, okay. So Nobby and Joe pull into town. There's a crooked town cop who's trying to make money off of tickets.
Yep.
And every single thing they say, like, if they say, hey, you can't do that, that's unconstitutional, he says, oh, impersonating a lawyer, that's another $50 or something like that. And it just goes constantly at this. So they're brought before the town mayor, who's also like the judge and everything else. He has like everything. 10 titles. His cousins, if he doesn't run it, his cousins are running it, like the chief of police or whatever. It's his cousin or whatever like that. And
at first, he's going to throw them in jail for the trumped up charges or get $100 out of them.
Yeah.
Then Nobby says, don't you know who I am? I'm Nobby Walsh, this is Joe Palooka. And then the big transformation, that the judge is overjoyed to have them in his town, and he tells off the chief of police. Haven't I told you about accusing people of crimes they haven't committed? And, wants them to stay as long as they want. They'll be the toast of the town, etc., etc. Then Rogers shows up with his wad of cash.
Yes.
And they stop him from going in. He wants to go in and see the mayor. They stop him. He greases their palms and says, you tell them that I want to see the mayor urgently. And they go in, they do, the mayor comes out, and then they strike a shady deal, because the mayor only cares about money. He gives him all this money and says, you're going to have to sign with us as the exclusive kind of like representatives for any fights that happen in your town. And here's the money that'll get that going. And somehow he also turns him against Nobby. I missed exactly how that happened.
Yeah.
Because he just goes straight back in and then tries to throw them in jail. He's completely done a 180. He hates them now. He hates Nobby and Joe Palooka now. I didn't catch why that transformation happened.
I don't know. It had something to... Well, these guys are trying to stop Joe from fighting. Meanwhile, Nobby has come up with the idea to build a stadium in this town. I think.
No, it's not Nobby this time. This time it's the mayor.
Oh.
So there was
an endowment from the founder of the town, which could be used for the improvement of the town.
Yes. It's a huge sum in 1940s. Like, it's about $100,000 or something. Right. So, the mayor hits on the idea to use it to build this boxing stadium, because there's these guys.
Right.
But those guys have no intention of holding fights in West Wokingham Falls. Yeah. Here, they have no intention of holding any fights here. They just want to stop Nobby from holding any.
Right.
So the town's going to waste all this money on a boxing stadium that's not going to go anywhere or do anything.
Right.
And Nobby's pissing himself when he hears about this, because he realizes that Rogers has made a complete mistake. They had never had any intention of...
Oh, okay.
But then everyone realizes that if that's true, then the town's going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
And so... And they don't know what to do, and they hit on the idea. So this film, which so far seems to be about Joe not being able to have fights and needing to figure out how to foil some unscrupulous boxing promoters, now becomes a story about Humphrey running for mayor.
Yeah, so we have to talk about the party call. So there's a scene where they call the mayor's office. Yeah. There's a whole thing where there's a kind of party line where the phones in this town are connected, and after a certain number of rings, it goes to everyone's house or something, and the mayor doesn't answer the phone, so everyone else in town picks up their phones, and they can hear the conversation he's having in his office, and this is how the whole town learns that he's crooked. I don't know if any phone line ever worked this way.
This is what the scriptwriter is the best they could come up with?
Yeah.
For how to show people learning things in real time, a magic phone system that everyone can listen in on.
Yes. Oh yeah, and this is where we get actually stock footage of people on phones. Like, they couldn't even film everybody. They had just have stock footage of bizarre, just footage they had of people on a phone call that they've just spliced into this 1-hour movie. Because they couldn't make the effort. So they have to convince... Yeah, somehow they say that, like... Humphrey is the guy that has to run for mayor.
Yeah, well, he's the only one. The solid citizen is the joke because he's so fat.
Right, and then there's a bunch of we have to go through all this stupidity. Like, you're gonna run in the race, and he's like, I never run in a race before.
Yeah.
What's your platform? What platform are you gonna stand on? Oh, I can stand on all sorts of platforms as long as they're strong enough.
Yeah.
And it hurt me in my soul having to go through all these. They must have been old hat gags at the time, even.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we have a montage. They love montages in these movies of the mayoral race. I guess because they're so short. They're making speeches at one stage, and then the whole crew, the good guy crew, is arrested. And then they're released again.
Yep. Then Roger shows up, and he says, "You're an idiot to the mayor, and by arresting them, you've." That's a terrible thing. It will backfire on him. How will it backfire on him? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I didn't get it. I didn't get why we needed a whole arrest and release if they're just going to be released anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, they were going to hold him for 90 days until after the election. And then Rogers comes in and says, that'll never work, it'll backfire on you. And I thought, why will it backfire on them?
Don't know. So...
He says, I've got a better scheme.
Oh, yeah.
But
what a scheme.
It's another scheme.
What a scheme this one is.
This is a scheme. This is a very 1940s kind of scheme.
Yeah.
Child out of wedlock scheme.
Yes. They hire this precocious little actress to
Must
come
be about
into town.
3 years old, but very...
Yes.
Very clever.
Yes. Comes into town. She's going to pretend to be Humphrey's...
daughter.
Estranged daughter that he's not paying child support on or something. Like, the actual arrest charge is like...
Abandonment of a child.
Is it abandonment?
Yeah. I don't think there was child support in the 40s.
Okay. But she comes up and she's like, Mommy, Mommy told me to come to you or
whatever. She's like, Daddy, Mommy says you got to come home. And Humphrey's like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
What's going on, little girl? But then she starts crying, and so he picks her up and comforts her. And everyone's muttering.
This is enough corruption.
Because there's nothing worse. Like, the mayor is a literal criminal who charges them for, talking back.
Yeah.
Insulting a police officer.
Yeah.
Impersonating a lawyer.
Yeah.
They have a fake stop sign on the highway, and then once you've stopped, they move it away and say, why have you stopped on the highway? You're creating an obstruction.
Yes.
But, never mind all that. It's a big problem that Humphrey may have a daughter.
Yeah.
That he's to a woman he's not married to.
Yes, and this 1 hour movie never questions who could this woman possibly be.
Yeah.
When did this happen?
No, everyone's just horrified and immediately turns on him.
Yes. So,
and
but they know this is some sort of plot. Like, the good guys know.
Nobby and
Joe and Anne and
Prunella,
they're all
two
like,
dudes.
Yeah, they're like, well, come on, this has to be some sort of scam. Let's get into the mayor's office. So, Nobby puts on this ridiculous fake beard.
And pretends to be a French doctor.
Yeah. And
Dr. Nobel. And he says...
or something like that.
Yeah, Nobby, yeah. Nobel.
Yeah.
And he just says Vive la France constantly.
Yes. As if the actors could remember their lines almost. More than jokes, it seemed like.
Oh, he just rattles off... He just rattles off grammar tables.
Yes.
As pretending to be speaking French, but just like, nous avons, vous avez.
Yeah.
Ils ont.
But it's really like a goofy fake beard.
Yeah. No one would ever be taken in by this character.
No, but I guess it's supposed to be a comedy bit that the mayor's taken in. So he tells the mayor, lie down on the couch and close your eyes. And while his eyes are closed, he goes around the office looking for evidence that this little girl is a plant.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he finds a business card for a talent agency, and that seems to be enough.
Yeah. Why would the mayor have that even? It was Rogers that found the girl and brought her to town.
Yeah.
Why would the mayor have that card? Also, Nobby's doing some sort of word association thing, like he's trying to get the mayor to self-incriminate.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't go anywhere.
He keeps saying, like, ring, and the guy says wedding. And he says, no, try again. And he's like, ring, diamond. Yeah, he's like, no. And then finally he says boxing. He's like,
yes! But this doesn't go anywhere.
No, it doesn't go anywhere. There's no point to it. And he's also trying to be a kind of Sigmund Freud type in this scene, instead of being this French doctor or whatever he's... I don't know what's going on. But anyway, he accidentally slams the beard in the desk drawer and it comes off. Yeah. And that's when the mayor suddenly realizes that
this was Nobby all along.
French doctor was Nobby all along. So they go in, Nobby and Joe and Ann go into town to the talent agency. Meanwhile, the bad guys are like, we need to kidnap that little girl. I don't know quite why.
To stop her from spilling the beans.
Why did they get a hold of her in the first place instead of waiting? I don't understand.
Well, they've gone all the way back to New York to the talent agency, Joe and Nobby, and to convince the little girl to come back to Wokingham Falls.
Yeah.
To reveal the truth that she was paid.
Yes.
Why would they need the little girl specifically? Oh, I suppose because the little girl was the one that did it.
Why not bring the talent agent?
Well, that's just some woman. It could be anyone, right? Yeah. But if it's the little girl, I'll give the movie a little credit here.
Okay.
If it's the little girl, then they'll believe it.
So Rogers has figured out, wait a second, we better get that girl in case Nobby gets to her first.
Yeah, so they go and try to get her address to kidnap her from her house.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Nobby and Joe are in the office with the little girl. Luckily, she's there at the studio. And they're easily persuaded to come back, presumably for no money, to tell the truth.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, the two toughs are leaning on the receptionist to let him in, and she's really scared and intimidated. Yeah. In the end, they go to the filing cabinet and grab the address out. It's the first thing, the first piece of paper they find. This movie only goes an hour. Yeah. Meanwhile, Nobby spotted the toughs, the heavies, and they quickly usher them out, and there's a scene. It feels very long where they're waiting for an elevator.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's very, very dramatic music playing, as you pointed out.
Yes.
Very dramatic. Like, waiting for this elevator scene is the most dramatic thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Meanwhile, Humphrey Pennyworth is in jail because he's been arrested for...
for child abandonment.
Child abandonment or whatever. He decides he's got to break out. He doesn't want to break the law, but he's got to break out. Somehow he knows... something. He's told this by the cop that comes in and says, guess what, this is going to happen or whatever, and he's like, I gotta break out.
Yeah, well, he tells him that Nobby and Joe have been caught.
Right, okay, right.
But they haven't, so he's lying, I think.
He's lying,
the guy who brings him his meals.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
He's misinformed.
How would he know that as well?
I don't remember.
Maybe they called him and told him?
Yeah, I don't...
It doesn't make sense.
So, the way he breaks out is he runs in a slow circle around his cell, and then he just smashes through the wall. Then he gets on his trike with the outhouse attached. Yeah. Now, I gotta say, this moment was, for him to smash a wall like that, could have come out of the comic strip. But, this is at like minute 54.
Yeah, the movie's almost over.
You cannot plug this into the last 5 minutes of your movie. The tone has never been like this up to this point. We had a very serious voiceover at the beginning talking about...
Crime in boxing,
and I'm the world championship boxer. My name's Joe. All that kind of stuff. And now suddenly, 5 minutes from the end, this guy literally smashed through a brick wall and then is riding around on a tricycle with an outhouse attached to the back.
It's a bit silly. Meanwhile, the whole town is assembled again, and they're waiting with a bunch of pies.
There seems to be some sort of picnic, like it's a rally.
Well, Nobby and Joe told them to do this. He said, get everyone in town to meet in the town square.
Yeah.
And wait 6 hours.
Yeah.
I say, I have a problem with this plan. How do you get all these people to wait for 6 hours? You can't.
Yeah.
So what it should have said was, in 6 hours, gather everyone in the town square.
Yeah.
But they do it this way. And that means that the mayor shows up and he sees all these people milling about, wanting to eat the pies that Pranilla has baked. But she won't let anyone eat pies until Joe arrives. Why? Why can't they just eat the pies? And then the mayor gets this great idea that he will go and buy a bunch of pies that he will let them eat, and then they will eat the pies and want to vote for him.
Right.
Rather than for Humphrey, who is not letting them eat pies.
Right.
What?
Yes.
Anyway.
What is right?
But the only reason they do this so that there can be a pie fight.
Yes. Well, okay, so before that, Joe and Nobby show up with the little girl, they put her on stage, she's about to confess to having lied. The gangsters show up and say, give me that kid. Right on stage, right in front of everybody, the gangsters are like, give me that kid. It's much like shooting this guy in public at the boxing game. What is your game here?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You can't just abduct a kid in broad daylight in front of 100 people. They're crowding around you. You can't even get away with her. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't make sense.
And then it turns into a pie fight.
A really long pie fight.
A very long, 6-7 minute long pie fight, which already was old hat by 1950. I don't understand. Are pies going to stop gangsters that are trying to abduct a child? Really? A pie in the face is like, well, I better turn around. And it's really like, there's all sorts of dumb stuff happening. Like the kid at one stage gets onto a slide and slides down to get away from the bad guys. It is a child slide.
Goofy.
Just walk around to the other side. You know what I mean? Like nothing, and it isn't even staged as a funny joke.
No. There's another thing, I guess is supposed to be funny. Nobby hammers a bunch of croquet hoops into the ground.
Yeah.
And then has the little girl lure gangsters to run into the croquet hoops, where they then trip over them.
Yes.
They would have seen them.
Yes, exactly. Just like the slide. Like,
you know
also, you can grab this kid off the ladder on the slide. You know, there's none of this adds up in any way.
Then Nobby gets out from, once they've fallen over the croquet hoops, Nobby comes out from behind a bush and brains them with a croquet mallet, presumably killing them.
yeah.
But there's a hilarious boonk noise.
Yes.
So
there's a boonk noise, that little Foley effect, meanwhile, one of the chief of police gets a pie in the face, and he changes his mind. He likes the taste of the pie, but then he realizes he swallowed his whistle, so like when he touches his stomach or whatever, the whistling sound comes out. All this kind of inane stupidity. They couldn't figure out how to end this movie, and they're like, pie fight.
Yeah.
This is years after vaudeville, and there's still... I just couldn't believe it. I was in disbelief at how awful, stupid, idealist this whole sequence was.
Yep.
I guess somehow they've beaten the bad guys because the bad guys have had pies in the face. These are men with guns.
Yep. Well, Joe's not throwing pies because he's a serious character.
That's right.
He's laying everyone out.
That's right. That's right. They beat the bad guys, and finally, Nobby is able to light his cigar, which is the original cigar, which has somehow come back around.
I didn't catch that. I know it was being passed around a lot in the first half of the film.
Somehow it ended up in his own pocket, and he lit it, and it explodes in his face.
The end.
The end. Hard work.
Yeah, this was work getting through these two movies, I gotta admit.
Alright, do we know any trivia about these movies at all?
Nothing. I did. I looked. I even used the VPN to look at the Turner movie database.
Okay.
But there's nothing. Unlike last week where there was quite a lot of information. Turner Classic Movies online had no information on these movies, just plot synopses.
Yeah. They had been seemingly lost until a couple of weeks ago.
Right. Well, someone had ripped them off VHS.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I just have a few things about the actors.
Okay.
So, as you already pointed out, Robert Coogan, who has appeared on the podcast before as Suki in Skippy, he never had much of a career as an adult.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you go to his Wikipedia page, it says his main role as an adult was Humphrey Pennyworth.
Right.
That's not That's not something you're going to get your name in lights.
Yeah.
It's not an ornament to your career. As you mentioned, Joe Kirkwood was Australian-American, born in Melbourne. So was the other headliner for the film, Leon Errol.
Really?
He was born in Sydney.
Wow.
Yeah. So two Australians headlining these awful
bizarre.
films. Yeah, he from Sydney. He went to university. He was training in medicine at university.
Okay.
And appearing in stage productions at the university, and dropped out.
Okay.
Had a long career in vaudeville and silent cinema.
Okay.
And made, from the mid-30s, was making like 6 short films a year, every year, until he died in 1951.
Right.
So he was in his 60s making these movies.
Okay.
And he was born in like 1889.
Yeah.
So he had a long career.
Yeah, right.
In vaudeville. Maybe he gave them the idea for the pies.
Right. Right.
The other interesting thing about Leon Errol is that his most famous role, probably, for which he is best known, is that he co-starred in the Mexican Spitfire movies with Lupe Velez.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh, so there's a bit of crossover there.
There is, yeah.
Interesting.
He played 2 characters in those movies. Uncle Matt, who was kind of like Velez's partner in crime.
Okay.
And his Uncle Matt's doppelganger, a stuffy British lord called Lord Epping. And the plot of most of the Mexican Spitfire movies were apparently about them exchanging identities.
I see. Interesting.
Yeah. And that's all I have.
Okay. So I guess you should vote.
Yep.
Okay, the comics are improving.
It depends. Yes, the art's certainly improving.
Yes.
I think but the serious tone I enjoyed less. They were funnier last week.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I think having
Even with Humphrey.
I think having a like Palooka's an idiot was funnier. Yeah.
And I mean, sure, Humphrey's an idiot. And he...
And I like Batiste again. I like the funny accents and stuff.
True.
I liked all that kind of stuff. But I still would not read these.
No.
And I couldn't recommend them, really.
No.
I think we're only really talking about them because they got movies made of them. They lucked out and had that Hollywood deal.
Well, I mean, it was a big deal once. Not as big as Little Abner.
Yeah.
But once upon a time, as you said, this was in hundreds of newspapers all across America for many years. And ran right up until 1985.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now gone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. These movies, boy, so I must have voted nay last week.
Yes, you did.
But, I mean, looking back after watching these, there's no Lupe Velez, there's no Jimmy Durante.
Yep.
That lady that played Mame Palooka, like, the actors were good.
They were good. It had a budget.
The
script didn't make sense.
Shots. No.
Yeah. But it had big names.
Yeah.
And I guess it was competently shot and edited.
Yeah.
And we had music numbers.
Yes.
These films are as bad as any films we've done on the podcast.
I really was thinking, especially when they got to the pie fight, we need to do the Is It Worse Than Veronica segment this week. Because I think we're pretty close.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're not as incompetent for sure, but in a sense they were worse. Well,
they were certainly more boring.
Yeah, they were way more boring. Absolutely. Veronica was at least entertaining on some level of, like, I can't believe what I'm looking at. This is like... I couldn't believe it, but not in an entertaining way. It was just like, we've been reduced to a pie fight, and this plot about the contract doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
This whole the party line was driving me crazy, especially when they started cutting in footage of just people that were not, you know.
This is dull, as meandering, as nonsensical.
Yeah.
Plot holes.
Yeah.
As any film we've done, I'm finding it hard to think of stupider movies than these that we've covered. They really just had no respect for the audience. This is just B movies.
Yeah.
That Monochrome was just cranking out.
Yeah, was it Vitaphone or something like that? Vitaphone.
Vitaphone was the other one. I think.
Oh, they did the shorts.
They did the shorts.
Right.
This one, I think the name of the studio was Monochrome.
Okay. Monogram.
Monogram
Pictures.
That's better.
Okay, yes.
I mean, it's hard to think. Harold Teen was better.
Yeah.
And Harold
It had that dance sequence at the end.
It had the amazing dance sequence.
Yeah.
If it's not clear...
And yet it's amazing that they made 11 of these and a TV series.
It's just a different standard of... when you don't have a television, you went and saw a movie every week.
Yes.
Different kind of consumption, yeah. So different production values. You need to get it out as quick as possible, as cheaply as possible.
Yeah. Okay, adaptation. Boy, it actually... There were points of similarity.
Yep. Coincidental points of similarity, even, to the extent people getting shot in the ring.
Yeah.
Contract shenanigans.
Yeah.
That was all... even building the stadium with the town's money.
Yep.
That stuff was there. I have to say, especially compared to last week, it feels like as the comic has changed, so has this movie.
I do agree, because...
Joe's gone from being a lumpy, out-of-shape freak that could just hit hard to a guy in really good shape who can actually box.
Yeah.
He's, as we said, he's still a bit dumb, but that dumbness is now really wholesome, and the focus of the importance of his character has shifted from being stupid to being gallant.
Yes.
His gallantry is what's important about the character now, and that's present in the film as well. I
agree. I kind of think it's there. I think it's a yay.
Yeah, I'm going to say yay too. It does feel
kind of like, even how Nobby has become noble as well, this version of Nobby is like a good guy. He's not really...
I'm voting yay because the change has tracked with the changes in the comics.
I agree. That's the thing.
I'm not voting yay because it's a good thing to watch.
No, absolutely
or because they've done something clever or interesting with the material.
No.
It's dull.
Yeah.
Awful, like a travesty, really.
Yes.
But I'm voting yay because as the comic has changed, so too has this movie interpretation.
Yeah.
I make no claim to being consistent in the way I vote.
No.
Week to week.
No, of course not. That's the problem with the adaptation category.
It's whatever sparks my interest.
But you know, the thing is, when Humphrey smashed through the wall and drove off on that bike, I was like, okay, the way the strip is working at this point in time is we have these kooky Nazis, we have Batiste, we have all this other kind of stuff happening around Joe, who's kind of normal. Nobby's become kind of normal at this stage, and all the weirdness happening around them. And it seems like there wasn't enough of that in this, but we haven't seen the other 9 of these, and maybe there's more of that.
More shenanigans.
In the first Humphrey or some other movies where...
We will never know.
We will never... That's right. Absolutely right. Okay, so please like, rate, review, subscribe. Please send us comments through Facebook or Instagram or Blue Sky. All those links are in the show notes. Or you can send us an email at the email address, which is in the show notes.
Brilliant.
Please join our Patreon at patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion, all one word, to help us pay for hosting fees and sometimes for DVDs and books and things like that. Okay. Next week we're going to keep it boxing, unbelievably, because we wanted to see some real boxing, question mark. We're going to be covering Ashita no Joe.
A boxing movie that might actually be about boxing.
Yes, so the manga was finally released in English for the first time, I believe just last month or the month before. It has never been available before.
Good. So we're jumping on the bandwagon once again.
That's right. The movie is from 2011. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Ashita no Joe. I think that
the boxer is called Joe again.
Yeah, that's weird. It's not a Japanese name even, really, Joe. But anyway, maybe that will be unpacked a bit in the movie. Maybe he's named after Joe Louis. What did I want to say? Oh yeah, the book is called maybe Ashita no Joe, Tomorrow's Joe, which is like the literal translation. I think it might like have both titles on there if you're looking for it. It's a big fat like 500-page book if anybody is following along, and I think that covers it.